Hello.
Hi, how are you doing, Tara?
I love your posters, by the way.
Oh, thanks. They are posters of movies that I have made.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yes,
Are you in
Monster.
are you in LA?
No, no, I'm in Ohio.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, I started a no-budget movie production company in 2012 because I just needed something to feed my soul. I was really
Nice.
burned out from teaching composition for too long, and I'm like, it's a little rascals could do it. And these kids were poor. I could put on.
Right.
I could, why not? So I knew nothing about making movies.
Awesome.
I bought a camera and I knew how to write, obviously.
Mhm.
And I just started asking like everyone I knew, like, "Hey, I'm making a movie. Would you like to be in it?"
Oh, that's so cool.
I'm a shameless self-promoter. I have two of my books over on this side.
Very cool. Very
So,
cool.
so my friends are because I do other podcasts. They're
Uh-huh.
like, how much more shameless promotion can you do? I go, I haven't put my DVDs up yet. Come
Right,
on.
exactly. Exactly.
So, right.
Very cool. Yeah, I actually went to Emerson College and spent a semester in Los Angeles. So
Nice.
I my background actually is in news and TV news and print journalism and all that.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
That's exciting.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's excellent. And other than write, what do you do now?
I don't. I only write. I'm a full-time writer.
Really?
I left the Associated Press a year ago, actually.
Wow, look
Yeah,
at you. Full-time
yeah.
writer. That's like the dream of like every
No,
writer,
it's not that I make a lot. It's that I've made a lot of really smart decisions prior to making the really stupid decision.
That's good. I mean, you have to have that. I mean, I think
I'm
making
also
smart
old, so
so yeah,
that
yeah,
helps.
yes, you look ancient. Um, I think part of making good decisions is something that most of us don't get to do, or because that's why we have so many stories about going back and telling your younger self, look,
Exactly.
you don't want to date this person, really get out, or,
Precisely.
right. Yes, no, I get it. That's wonderful. All right, well, I'm going to do my intro, and
Okay,
then we'll get going.
great.
Hey, this is Mark Justice, and welcome back to Between the Lines. Tonight, kiddies, we've got a fun interview with a multi-genre author, Tara Lush. Tara, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. This is going to be exciting. What what I wanted to talk to you, why I wanted to talk to you first, is because I saw your cozy mysteries, and I like the fact that you really enjoy writing this with this kind of coffee theme, and that you're a fan of dogs. Yes, and I'm a huge dog person, and I thought it was the puns. I love how puns are so utilized in cozy mystery titles, and especially, oh, I feel like an idiot because I didn't write it down. There was the
Brew
oh,
corpse.
cold brew corpse, and there was another one about the grind.
Grounds for murder.
Grinds from murder, right? So I'll edit this to make me look less stupid. Um, no, I won't. Uh, I just thought those were great, and that based on just that, I'm like, oh, I have to talk with Tara. I just have to talk with this writer. So I'm excited to get to know you. I like to start with like a big kind of picture question. When you
Okay.
look back and going back into childhood, who were some of your favorite writers when you were growing up?
Oh, without a doubt, Louise Fitzhugh, uh, Harriet the Spy.
Oh
Harriet
yeah.
the Spy was an early and major influence on me in every way. It probably changed the direction of my life because I ended up becoming a journalist, and I attribute it to that book and a writer. Obviously, Harriet, the character, writes in her notebook, and I started writing in a notebook very early and kept a journal all throughout high school.
Isn't that amazing? When you think about it,
It
like
is.
how the power of that character. And have you ever reached out? Was the author still alive at the time?
I don't know. I didn't ever think that I could contact her. It didn't sort of, I guess as a child, it didn't really occur to me that somebody wrote that. It was just a story that I kind of lived in my own
Okay,
way.
I see.
I don't know if you know the premise of it, but it's basically about a girl who's having a hard time in school with her classmates. And then she decides to spy on her neighbors
Oh,
and
okay.
write down, all the goings on in her neighborhood. And then her classmates find the notebook. But it's this wonderfully detailed book. But I actually used to, spy on my neighbors. And then when I grew up, I became a reporter. So,
Here you go.
and now I'm a fiction writer. So I do spying in a different way.
Yes, that's fantastic. Did you ever consider reaching out to the author when you got older?
I didn't actually. No, I think she passed away quite some
Mm,
time ago, if I remember correctly.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure that she did.
yeah, that makes sense. I love how for most of us, the ones who read at an early age, um, and I was taught, I was read to from the womb and could read
Mhm.
before I went to kindergarten. So I think it was the best gift. One of my first
Absolutely.
best gifts my parents could have given me was the
Yeah.
ability to read and encouraging to read,
Yep.
you know, and feeling frustrated
Absolutely.
in kindergarten, like, why are we learning the ABCs? I'm thinking these kids are like, why? What what are we doing here? What
Right.
don't they know how to read? But it follows with you, it follows you
It
reading,
does.
and it
It
just
does.
becomes part of your life.
Yeah, I remember being pretty young, 4 or 5, my parents bringing me to the library in Santa Rosa, California. And I think the library is still there. It was there when I visited maybe 10, 15 years ago. And just the feeling I got opening the door to the magical place. And it smelled the same. It was amazing. And I loved it. I loved going to the library. I'd come home with stacks of books. It was wonderful.
Mhm.
And my parents read a lot individually. My father, when I was growing up, was studying for a master's degree, so I saw him reading a lot. And my mom liked to read for pleasure, and she was also in school, so I saw my parents reading for themselves. And I think that's also really important.
Yeah, I totally get that. My parents both read, although we didn't do, I don't, reading seemed to be more of a quiet, like, activity, or when not in the hustle and bustle of like daily life, but usually my mom stayed up later than my dad, and so that was when she would read, sometimes like in the evenings. But they're both, my mom doesn't read as much. My dad has become more the reader. I think since he retired, I think he just really enjoys reading. But still, it was just you know part of our life, just
Right.
having books. There was nothing more exciting than getting like a new book, or that, like you, the smell of books is
Yep.
something that sticks with me. We had a large bookstore, a used bookstore called Bookseller. They must have had, I don't know, 30, 40,000 books. And the smell of that place,
Yeah.
that kind of sweet, almost like fall smell,
Mhm.
you know, uh, I miss that place because it was like, oh yeah, 'cause you never knew what was going to be there from week to week.
Right. Right.
So, so other than Harriet the Spy, did you have other books that you really enjoyed when you were
When I
young?
was very little, I loved Clifford the Big Red Dog. I remember
Mm,
being in kindergarten and the Scholastic, the when you would buy the books from Scholastic and you could like circle, you bring home the flyer. I'm of a certain age, I'm 51. So you would bring home this flyer and you and your parents would like, usually I would just say, I want these books here. But I loved Clifford, even though I knew, and sometimes my mom would say, like, that book is not, it's too easy for you,
right.
basically. But I loved Clifford so much.
Oh yeah.
And the other thing, I also loved graphic novels. I loved Snoopy in part because I grew up in Santa Rosa where Charles M. Schulz lived. And so there was a lot of references to Charles M. Schulz in my city in Santa Rosa. And he had also built an ice rink that had like pictures of Snoopy all around and the characters of Peanuts. So it was this magical place for me. So
Oh
I always
sure.
loved reading about Charles M. Schulz and his process, and I loved Snoopy, and I loved Charlie Brown and Lucy. And so
Yeah.
that was also an early form of storytelling. We didn't have a TV when I was growing up, so mostly my early influences were graphic novels, books, and music.
Yeah.
My
That
dad
makes
was
sense.
big into music, and I think I know every Rolling Stones song. My parents were hippies, so I did go to a Grateful Dead show when I was 4. So
There you go. Right. I was just envisioning the skating rink, and I would want to hear the Vince Guaraldi, Snow, falling like you know
It was very
from Christmas.
magical.
Yeah, I mean you would have to have that music playing while you're skating, you know, because that's like some of the seminal classics as a kid.
Uh-huh,
I was a TV kid.
uh-huh.
As much as I loved reading, I I loved TV because that's where I escaped into
Mm.
every bit as much, or if not more so, than reading. And so growing up watching those Peanuts cartoons, and which I still love. I mean, every year I look forward to watching those. You know,
Yeah.
it's I still feel like I'm 8 years old and I get to watch Charlie Brown. You know, so I totally get that. So what was it? I know Harriet the Spy really
Mhm.
started your journey of writing. Um, but that really kind of got you into journalism. When was it that you wanted to start writing cozy mysteries? Because that's one of the two genres you write in. Um,
Yes.
so what made you want to start writing cozy mysteries?
Well, Cozy Mysteries came after I wrote about a dozen romance novels. I actually wanted to write romance first, and I still write
Okay.
romance under my real name, Tara Lush. Um, I started, I was a journalist for the Associated Press for many years. And I was writing romance because I wanted to write stories that ended happily. Um,
Oh,
because I
okay.
wrote so many stories that did not end happily. I covered a lot of breaking news. I covered a lot of I witnessed 13 executions. I've covered mass shootings, the Haiti earthquake. I covered a lot of really terrible stuff. Like if, I was in Florida, so obviously terrible stuff here happens like every hour. And I thrived on it, and I was good at it. Except we'll get to that part later. But so I started writing romance, and I did okay. Actually, one of my books was a finalist for the RWA Rita Awards, which is sort of the highest honor for the genre, or was at the time. Um, and I had a little bit of success. And then I actually took a sabbatical. The AP has this wonderful program where you can take a sabbatical. And I took a sabbatical, and I did a real hard look at my romance. and I was indie published, and I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to write something a little. I was also a crime reporter for many years for a newspaper, and everybody thought I would write crime fiction when I said I wanted to write fiction. I had always wanted to write a romance novel because I read romance since way back when I was in high school. And then I decided that a cozy mystery might be a good blend of romance, crime, and happy ever after. And
Sure.
so in 2019, I wrote my first cozy mystery, and 6 months later, my agent sold it to Crooked Lane Books. And then, so I've written three. I just finished edits on my third, Live and Let Grind, which will come out in October.
I think that's the one I saw that made me laugh.
Yep,
I'm
that's
like,
the new one.
yes, I'm like, oh,
Yep, it's
because it's,
wonderful.
I'm
The
just like,
puns
was
are
so
just,
grateful to
yep.
have James Bond,
Mhm.
you know, and Paul McCartney, because I can hearing him sing
Yep,
"Live and Let Grind," and like,
yep,
and I just like, oh, this is beautiful.
yep, yep.
You covered so romance you wanted to do because you wanted something with a happier ending. Is that what attracted you to romance? Was it the structure of the end, or was it,
Um,
even though bad things happen, was there the semblance of something being knit together at the end? Because that I've only read one true romance as
mhm.
back in an undergrad when I was taking a popular culture class. um, I eventually got my master's in popular culture, but I never did another romance. It was a Harlequin romance, you know, something from the
Mhm.
70s or something
Right.
that, you know, very formulaic.
Mhm.
And so I understand the formula, and the tropes and things that go with it. But what did you find intriguing about wanting to write romance aside, or if there was anything aside from a sense of a happy ending?
Oh, well,
Or was it the
I
escapism of it?
oh, it's totally the escapism. And there's something about a well-written romance makes you feel like you're falling in love again. And that's a really heady feeling, obviously. I also really like sexy romance. I write
Okay.
very steamy, some of my romance is erotic romance. I've been published in Best Women's Erotica. Um, there's a difference between erotica and erotic romance, but most of my romance is really high heat, unlike the cozy mystery, which is really sweet, um, no swearing, because that's
Sweet,
the
no
genre.
heat, right? It's like a
No
Hallmark
heat.
movie.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
I would say that probably my cozies are a little on the edgier side of for cozy mystery,
Okay.
just slightly. But yeah, but my romance, and now actually I am writing, I write, my romance is all on Wattpad. I'm one of the few paid writers on Wattpad, and they actually published one of my books. They have their own book imprints now, and I actually published, they published one of my books on March 1st,
Wow.
a
Cool.
book called Drive.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I have a 3-book deal with them, and they're wonderful. Wattpad is a wonderful, amazing. I love working with them, so that's why I have all of my romance there, and I make a really decent amount of money there, far more than I ever did on Amazon, and I don't have to market, which is really nice.
Wow.
I don't have to do any ads. I don't have to do anything but, kind of promote myself, which I like to do.
Are they open to other genres? I think
They
other
are.
listeners are interested.
They are, but they really want you to create I mean, it takes time. It's taken years for me to get to this point. There are only a few hundred of us that are in the paid program there. And we have cultivated our followers, and we've built a community there. I have about
Mhm.
almost 50,000 followers on
Oh,
Wattpad.
wow.
And Wattpad is really expanding into Hollywood. They do a lot of options. One of my books have been optioned by a production company in Germany. They do a lot there. So I'm really impressed with what I've done and what I've been able to do there. So
Yeah, you should
actually,
be.
it's super fun. It's really fun,
Yes.
and it's allowed me to quit my job, my journalism job. So
I
that's
mean,
saying
that's like the
something.
dream right there. I mean, the question I'm going to write later on down the road, it's like you've already kind of answered it. I always ask, like, what's your writer fantasy? Like, you're living it. I mean,
Yeah, I kind of am. I
yeah.
mean, I was in a really bad place with journalism. I had, getting back to the thing I said we could get back to later. Imagine being really great at something, but that one thing is terrible for your mental health. Like the
Yeah.
one thing that you are truly good at. Like I know that I'm probably a far better breaking news reporter than I am a fiction writer. Um, but it was terrible for my mental health,
Mhm.
covering the pandemic, covering politics, covering protests, covering executions, mass shootings, the whole thing. It really took a toll on my mental and physical health. And after my sabbatical, I went back to the AP in late 2019 and said, okay, I'm going to try this for a year. I'm going to go back, see how it goes, see the election through, help out with that. And then I'll think about what I'm going to do. Because I had been publishing books. And, at that point, I was publishing Cozy. And I was thinking, okay, I can try to do both. It was a lot doing both, but I can try to do both. And it was a union job. It was great. And I loved my colleagues. I loved my editors. It was not, and I love the mission of journalism and the necessity in this moment for journalism. But in December on Christmas of 2020, my gallbladder just died. It just was
Mm.
like, I'm out of here. And I ended up being in the hospital for 4 nights over Christmas. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the gallbladder is considered the place where you hold your anger.
Okay.
And I had so much anger over stuff that was in the news and things.
Sure.
And I said to myself when I was in the hospital, I was like, if I get out of this without like cancer or complications, that's it. I'm changing my life. And fortunately, I'm in a position where we could do that. And I did. And I have not looked back. And I'm so happy
That's
now.
great. Now I know why my gallbladder is so wonky. I get it now. You know.
Well, I also went vegan, and like
Yeah.
I also went vegan and lost a lot of weight. And I move every day and I write every day. And I just thank goodness that I am living this life
You're in a
because
whole different world now. I mean, the
yes,
stress of the kind of job that you did must have been incredibly taxing.
it
And
was.
now to move away from that, it's like you're like living in vacation land,
Mhm.
you know? And so that's great. I mean, I am so happy for you. I mean, we barely know each one another, but I'm just hearing the joy in your voice makes me very happy for you.
Thank you.
I've always felt that, I know some people who most of us are indie writers, self-published, as am I, and I kind of enjoy the complete freedom because
Sure.
KDP has completely disrupted, and like you on
Yep.
Wattpad, those things have
Yep.
completely disrupted traditional publishing.
Absolutely.
And I think there's enough room on the hill for everybody to plant their flag and to see who salutes it. And,
Yep.
there's never any competition. And so
Yep.
I know other writers who feel threatened by the success of others. I'm like, why? If this person's doing his or her own thing, you do your own thing. And why should you
Yep.
have to compare to one another? So whenever I hear success, and I like to celebrate it. So kudos to
Thank you.
you for
Thank
not
you.
only the success of being on Wattpad and having multiple genres, but getting to a place where you could say, you know what, I've done doing a job that just sucks the life out of my soul and is
Mhm.
damaging me, and now I'm going to move to a happier place. So
It's
that's
a
hard.
great
It's a
feeling.
hard thing to do, but yeah, good for you.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if I should, I mean, because I love journalism. And like I said, I love the people that I worked with, and I
Yeah.
had a great situation, and I worked from home. I worked from home long before the pandemic. So I had a lot of freedom, and I had really great assignments, but I ultimately, life is really short. And at a certain point, if you can, I mean, obviously I have a lot of privilege because I'm able to, I was financially able to do this. My husband and I had made some really good decisions. So, um, but we live very simply, and we live in a small house with our now one dog. We unfortunately, on the second, we lost our very
Mm.
first dog, and it's been really hard.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
thanks.
I know that loss. It
Yeah, it's
hurts.
really, it's really devastating. But we have
It
another dog,
is.
and I'm sure we'll get more dogs in the future because we have
Yes.
lots of dogs. And
Yeah.
so we like our lives just kind of revolve around our dog. We don't have kids, so
Sure.
yeah,
That's
dogs.
good. I
Dog life.
that's a journey too in and of itself.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, we had three. One we lost him when he was I think 12, but he shouldn't have lived that
Mhm.
long. He was a boxer bull mastiff.
Oh,
He was
uh-huh.
120 pounds of love.
Oh, wow.
And then we had two smaller ones, a pit
Uh-huh.
bull mix, and then some kind of a terrier Shar mix.
Uh-huh.
And we lost those at 9 and 7
Oh
years
gosh.
old within 3 months of each other.
Oh my God. Oh,
And
I don't know if I could. Oof.
well, I told my wife, it's like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't
Oh,
want the heartache, as you know what
yeah.
you're going through. And it's
Yeah. Yeah.
just the losing them so quickly. I mean, it was years
Yeah.
after the first one, but the two in quick
Yeah.
succession.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I'm
That's
like,
really hard.
I can't, and like within a year, this was like 3 years ago. And I'm like, I just don't know if I want to go there again. Part of me just kind of died at that
Yeah.
moment. So I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
But moving on to back into the
Yes.
world of writing,
Yeah.
what um what makes a good cozy mystery to you?
I think what makes it, I mean, the thing that I love reading in a cozy mystery and writing is the found family. I mean, obviously there's a murder or a crime and somebody solves it and it's a great puzzle, but I think what keeps people coming back to a cozy mystery series are the characters and the found family. It's this really close knit either community or group of friends or friends and family, and they all interact with one another. And I think that's what I think people, unfortunately, our society, in part because of the pandemic, but in part because of the way we're structured, we don't have a lot of togetherness and closeness. And I think that reading about either a small town or a small community or a neighborhood or a village and having everybody know each other and everybody like each other. And for the most part in cozies, nobody's really super evil. Like there may be somebody who's terrible who kills somebody, which is awful. But I do think that for the most part, people are really gentle with each other in cozy mysteries. And that's something that's lacking now. And I think this
Yes.
idea that we have, this community of people who are like kind of gentle and tender with each other, that's a really wonderful thing. And imagine having that.
I get that. My first novel was a cozy.
Mhm.
And although there's no murder in it.
Mm.
There's still mystery. But this was like
Oh, okay.
Hallmark clean. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's based on the town I told you I'd grown up in, based in Vermilion. So all the landmarks are basically the same. The
Mhm.
places
Yep.
and all the memories of the main character. A lot of them are my memories. And
Nice.
so, but bringing in the story and what I found most fun about writing this. This is a genre I'd never even read. I was actually doing a movie proposal, writing a movie concept for Hallmark. That was
Oh,
that was the idea, because I had done
uh-huh,
other movies. I thought, oh, I like watching the Christmas time, Christmas cozies.
uh-huh.
I think they're kind of sweet in a saccharine
Yeah.
way, but there's still something. After you've seen two or three, it's like listening to a Motorhead song. You've heard the catalog, you know it, and if you like
Uh-huh.
it, great. Or AC/DC, like they're not going to stray too far from the path. And so I kind of came up with this idea, and I started working on it, and then I thought, oh, they're never going to want this. And then I went on their website, and the first thing I saw was, we're looking for writers. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? And so I started working on this thing, and then I had my cousin, who's an attorney, look over the terms and conditions, and they
Mhm,
were really bad. Like,
mm,
essentially, they could take your story and borrow from it, use it, and not pay you a thing, because it was just another idea that other people had had, and then you would forfeit all rights to sue them for plagiarism. I'm like, no, I'm good. And that's why I started. That's why I wrote the book on my own. And it's like, I'll just publish it myself. I'm not going to give my book away to Hallmark. Um, so that's how it started. And like, oh, and it was a challenge for me, because I'm more of a sci-fi, comedy, horror writer. Those are the things I tend to do.
interesting. That
But
must have been a fun writing journey,
it
doing something
was,
different like that.
yeah. And it was good to inject a lot of myself into the character.
Mhm,
And I knew from the beginning, when I structured this overall story arc, it was just going to be 4 books, each one
mm,
based on a particular season. So the first one's the winter book, and I just kind of framed the story, which was kind of true. I was done teaching at the time, and the main character is out of a job, and she's depressed, and of course she comes home to kind of nest and kind of
mhm,
heal up and figure out what to do.
mhm,
Um, and then there's this mystery that happens, and not to spoil it, but it involves people getting these packages that serve as
mm.
catalyst for change. And
Oh,
that's the whole theme of the series, is seasons
oh,
change.
cool.
And I
Yeah.
thought that's kind of nice, because sometimes it's easy to get into ruts, and it's hard to be pushed
Mhm,
out of our comfort zones, and that can be painful. But
mhm,
ultimately it can be good in the long run.
mm.
So, but still, writing in this genre, did my due diligence and my research. It was still it was still a challenge as a writer,
Mhm,
not only to follow the conventions, but like you had said, creating characters who were realistic.
mhm.
And the relationships between people and the town becomes a character.
Absolutely. That's so much fun. That's what the other
Yeah.
thing that I love. And I think that the readers I've talked to say they love when the town is a character.
Yeah. And that's kind of what had happened. And it was unbeknownst to me, like, again, this was my first book. I had done other
Mhm,
writing, but never anything long form except for
mhm,
my movies. And those were like just schlocky comedies. I mean, you could tell by the titles. So I was just like completely groping in the dark. Like, I don't know where I'm going, how I'm going to get
uh-huh,
there. I mean, I spent years in academia, so I had a really good outline, and I kind of
mhm.
knew how to write,
Yep.
but never having written a long piece of fiction. Um, you just never know what it's going to be at the end, and
Right.
how it's going to
Right.
be real well received. So the fact that people have read it and liked it, that was just like, oh,
Oh, that's
okay.
cool. That's
So
really
I
cool.
made me happy. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Um, so that was something that I found really kind of rewarding in a way unexpected. But now I'm working on the second book of the series, and after writing 3 other books before in different genres,
Mhm.
it's kind of nice to come back to that world in
It
a way.
is. It
You know,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. When I published Crooked Lane published Grounds for Murder in December of 2020. Cold Brew Corpse was in December 2021. And then this Live and Let Grind will be published in October. And so all of this has been, the first book was written prior to the pandemic, but the bulk of the work has been done during the pandemic. And being on Devil's Beach and going back to Devil's Beach has been this real pandemic balm for my soul. Like,
Hmm.
there's no pandemic there. Everything is cool.
Yeah.
You can go and sit in a coffee shop and not worry about getting infected with a
Yeah.
virus. And, everybody hugs. And it's this like wonderful idyllic place. And I love when I hear from readers and they say like, oh, I want to just sit with a book at the coffee shop name
Hmm.
is Purgatory.
No,
um
well, Devil's Beach. I mean,
right,
obviously,
it's on Devil's
what
Beach.
a
So
great name for a beach.
right,
Like,
right,
that's the one I would live on. Right.
right. And Devil's Beach is like this, it's in the Gulf of Mexico, but it's a little Key West like, and there's like a real hippie bent to it. So there's some people that like in Florida, there's some people that everybody kind of knew, maybe like made their money running drugs in the 80s, but like they're good pillars of society now. So whatever. And so everybody has like a little bit of a shady past, but everybody's very accepting.
Yeah, trying to kind of just like, that was my thing then, and now I'm just like chilling out.
Absolutely.
I'm good. Yeah, that was something I found so interesting, is creating the dynamic, the tensions between characters, that sometimes it just evolved naturally, like when I
Mhm.
wrote, and sometimes it was intentional. And I thought, oh, this is gonna be funny, because you have to create a foil or villain of
Mhm.
some kind.
Mhm.
And in a small town, there's always these, you know, and part of it, again, growing up in Vermilion, because there were people who were wealthy there and who had boats, and it was a community on the water. And so there was this kind of sense of pretension at times, and everyone's kind of snooty. At least, that's, there are people who are just regular schmoes like me. And so I kind of wanted to play with that dynamics as well. You have to have the snooty, wealthy people,
Mhm.
and small town politics, which becomes so incestuous, and so like backbiting, because it's a small town. Everyone is in everyone's business,
Right.
and I kind of enjoyed that, creating these characters who were this kind of the reporter gadfly. Nothing against your profession, but he's just kind of in everyone's business, and
Mhm.
he's kind of snarky, and that's what I love about him. Like, he was the last character I created for the first book. I'm like, oh yeah. My wife's like rolling her eyes, like, oh come on. I go, no, he's great, uh but no, I totally love that though. And creating the villain, Jillian
Yep.
Rosado Lancaster. You have to say all of her three names. You can't just call her Jillian. Do you know who I am? She has
That's
this,
awesome.
kind of embodies this, you know. So no, that's
Yep.
that's fun.
I'm going to tell you about the victim in my third book, Live and Let Grind, because I think you'll appreciate it. The victim in Live and Let Grind is a serial leaf blower, and everyone hates him.
Because he's out like 6 in the
He's out at
morning
6 in the
with the
morning and
weed,
like
with the
at night,
blower.
night with the blower. And like there's like a whole like sort of neighborhood spat. And so in the neighborhood, so in the neighborhood where Lana Lewis, the heroine who owns Purgatory, lives. Um, I don't know. Have you ever been to Florida?
No,
Okay.
no, I have not.
So in neighborhoods here, it's not uncommon that you have your mailbox, right? Like some people have their mailbox out at the curb. Like some people, it's like closer. In my house, it's like closer to the house, like flush with the house. Some people have it in like sort of the suburban areas out on the curb, so the mailman can just drive up. Some people have these giant fiberglass manatees holding the mailbox. They're like, potato shaped manatees, and they're
Yeah.
holding the mailbox. And the manatee is like just there. So in my book, in Lana Lewis's neighborhood, everybody on the block has a manatee mailbox, and the leaf blower moves in, hates the manatee, and removes it. And that's like shows that he's
Oh
not like
no,
part of the community,
he's not one of us, right?
And they got kind of mad because that was like something they all loved, and then he started to leaf blow. And so there's like a whole scene at the beginning where there's like a melee, and he like turns the leaf blower on Lana and her friend, and people are yelling, and like, somebody has a rake. The
Of
neighbor
course, I was
across
waiting for the pitchforks to come out.
right.
Right.
Oh, but that's not a pitchfork. So yeah, and Lana's dad is like the town gossip, but he's also an old hippie, and he smokes a lot of medical marijuana.
Who
And
doesn't, right? Yes.
right. Well, he's actually modeled after my own father. He's named after my own father, and my dad is like a 75-year-old. I don't want to say stoner, but
Yeah.
you know,
He likes to bake.
yeah, he does. And he lives in California. And so he's like trying to calm everybody down with like, peaceful, nonviolent like
Sure.
sayings. And everyone's like, shut up, Peter.
Yeah.
And so that's how Live and Let Grind starts, is that there's this melee with Gus, the guy next door, who just is leaf blowing. He has like an industrial leaf blower that goes, because in Florida, it's really common to have landscapers and people who leaf blow, like incessant leaf blowing here. It's just a thing because there's, so much, because nature, you have to beat back nature here almost every day. Otherwise it'll just take over because it's so hot and humid. And
Yeah.
if you didn't beat back nature, it would just grow over you, which is, obviously the core problem of Florida is that we keep trying to beat back nature and kill
Right.
the Everglades and everything. So,
Yes. Yeah.
if you don't, bugs will come in, the whole thing. So everybody here leaf blows, and it is so annoying. And I was just sitting here one day, and it just like the leaf blowers were going, and I was like, good God, I'm going to write a cozy mystery with a villain who is a leaf blower, a serial leaf blower.
I love it. Um,
And I just got the idea for my other cozy mystery this weekend, another series this weekend. I will share it. I probably shouldn't, but I will.
if you want to share it off outside of the context of the show,
I
it's
don't care.
fine.
No, I think it's too uniquely Florida, and probably like a lot of people don't know what it is.
Okay.
Shuffleboard Club.
Oh, fantastic.
I play shuffleboard.
I won an award for shuffleboard way back in church camp days when I was a teenager. So.
Well, St. Petersburg has the oldest and largest shuffleboard club in the world. It's been there since like the 20s. And so another mystery writer, she also writes weird Florida mysteries. She's indie. Her name is Margaret Lashley. She lives in town. We're like super close friends. We go play shuffleboard every week. It's like
Fantastic.
the two mystery writers. We like get food. And yesterday we ate pierogies from these Ukrainian families and just like played.
You're living the life.
It was awesome. I'm telling you, it was awesome.
It's shuffleboard is like a warmer, faster curling. I've always liked shuffleboard. That's why I like curling. It's like, oh, I get it. I immediately get it.
Right. Bocce ball, shuffleboard, curling, they're all in that sort of thing. But see here, St. Petersburg used to be known, where I live, it's on the Gulf Coast. It's near Tampa, but on the coast. And my city used to be known as, God's waiting room. St. Petersburg was the place where, the newlywed and newly dead, Yes. Now it's become like Brooklyn South. So shuffleboard is like this super hipster thing now. And it's like hipsters and like the really old play shuffleboard, and nobody works, or nobody has or they're like my friend and I, like we're writers and we write in the morning or at night. So it's like the shuffleboard courts were packed yesterday.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. There are so many reasons why I love doing this show. It was because I met through you, I met through Instagram, and so admire people's passion and the diversity of writing talent and ability and desire to write. And as we'll get into process here soon, and everyone has a different process. We start at one point and we have a finishing point, but we get there through wildly different means. And I find that intriguing. But then there's these moments like this where I'm just envisioning all this. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. You're in the perfect place to write with these kind of eccentric characters and lifestyle that almost make it like, oh, if this were a movie, people are like, oh, I get it. It's not real life, but I love that it is.
Florida's very much
fantastic.
that way. Yeah. I mean, Florida, like that is the thing, is that Florida is always, I mean, as a journalist, it was like every day somebody had a gold platter at your front door with news, and that's the way I look at it with cozy mystery. Like there's no better place to write a cozy mystery than Florida, because it's so weird, and you can make it as dark or as light as you want. Like, I kind of like to think of myself as like the less cynical, lighter Carl Hyacin. I don't know if you've read Hyacin or not, but obviously he's a master, and I would say that he's almost cozy adjacent, but he's a little too edgy and cynical to be cozy, but he's cozy adjacent.
It's like if Steely Dan were to write a cozy mystery album.
Right? Yeah, I would say that
cynicism is there, that edgy.
Yeah,
we're kind of jazz, we're kind of rock, we're always cynical.
Yes, but there's a little bit of pop. And Tim Dorsey as well. And I don't think it's any surprise that, there's also a long history in Florida of reporters, newspaper people becoming fiction writers. So, like the guy who wrote Bosch, he was a reporter at one point, I think at the Tampa Tribune. Tim Dorsey was at the Tampa Tribune, Carl Hyacin and Miami Herald, and Buchanan, Miami Herald. So there's a real foundation for that here. So it wasn't like when I started writing romance, it wasn't even, people didn't, initially I was worried because I wrote under my real name. I was worried like people would make fun, or they would think, oh my God, she's writing sex, but really nobody did. Like, that's the other thing. In Florida, it's really hard to embarrass yourself here. Like you really have to go out of your way to like you know, because things are so crazy here. It's like,
Okay,
yeah, she's writing erotic fiction, no biggie. Like, it's not a big
that's
deal. Like, nothing, it
yeah.
doesn't, you know, nobody is scared. Like, it takes a lot to scandalize people. Like, I'm virtually, it takes a lot to shock me personally.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
a lot.
No, that's great. Um, how community affects your writing and becomes part of that world building, which is something I just want to get into
Mhm,
in a minute, because that's you have to draw from something. You
mhm.
know, you have to give great characters and give them a world in which to live in. And if you're already living in a world that is so rich, it would just be easy to tap into it.
It's
And
very
and
simple.
and then the
Yes.
fact that so many of you reporters are getting into writing, I mean, you already have the chops to write, you already have the discipline to write, and that's something that, and if you have that ability and you've made your living writing, it's only a transition to a different form.
Right.
And especially if, like you said, you've made wise choices and you're able to write full time, that in itself, it becomes the dream, has been the dream of so many writers I've talked with. And because, like, yeah, I'd like to be able to write and make a living, but they write when they can because they have a family to support,
Mhm.
and all those kinds of things. So, well, let's talk about well, before I get into world building, because that's what I want to talk about. But you write in romance and cozy mystery. Are there any other genres that you would like to write in down the road?
Um, I think I would like to explore more mystery. I think, you know, I actually, right now I'm writing dark romance. I'm writing actually a vampire romance set in 1980 Boston, 1986 Boston. Um,
That's
I
very
do,
specific, very
it is
specific.
very specific. And I actually, I've sort of, at a certain point, as I turned to cozy, it was kind of real interesting. As I turned to cozy mystery, which is obviously cozy and warm, and everybody's drinking coffee and eating snacks, in my romance, I somehow thought in my mind that it was very hard to redeem men. So I just decided to write dark romance, and I'm only writing like mafia characters now.
Okay.
Um, but uh, I think that at some point I would like to try my hand at a darker mystery, like a noir, or
Yeah,
a more hard-boiled mystery.
those are fun.
I'm
They're really
not there
fun.
yet. Yeah, I think they would be. I'm not there yet. Like, I
Hmm.
have a lot to draw from, um, in from my days in journalism. I just need to sort of let the happiness out for a little while before I get back
Right,
into it.
exactly,
Yeah.
because it will cloud, it will keep whatever you're writing, it will be in you. You'll start dreaming
Yeah.
about it. You'll thinking about it.
Yeah.
You're always like, when you're not writing, you get a chance to relax, but then it always comes back to you. And it's the
Yeah.
worst time of the night when I'm trying to sleep is when I get this idea like, oh, that's what you should be writing. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's great, but I'm so tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
get it.
Having the cozy mystery side is really, like I said, it's a balm for my soul.
Yeah,
My
this is what you
soul.
need right now. You need the healing to
Yes.
come. And then when you get to that place where, okay, I can take these other steps into other areas, um,
Yeah.
then you'll be able to do that. Because I think you'll also want to read some really good hard-boiled fiction, unless you
Yeah.
haven't,
I
like
mean,
Mickey Spillane. You got to read one
right.
lonely,
Right.
you got to read some Mickey
Yeah.
Spillane.
I
You
actually
know.
just read Kathy Reich's Deja Dead. It was sort of the basis for the TV show Bones.
Oh, okay.
And it's very dark, but it was so good. The writing
Yeah,
was just so sharp and good, and it's
yeah.
set in Montreal, and a city that I really love. And but I need to think about it. But yeah, I I, I do think that may be in my
Hmm.
future.
You'll know when it's right. That's the thing. It's like I immediately went, because cozy was so out of my wheelhouse. My second novel is a splatter western. It's
Mm,
pulp, and it was purposely done because I wanted to show range, and I
uh-huh.
also wanted to prevent the whole like rabid fans from hobbling me and making me write more cozy mysteries because they wanted to see how it ended. Like, I've seen misery, I know how this ends. Um, so that was like, I wanted to say, like, I'm not a cozy writer. I want to write
Mhm.
all things that make me happy. Whatever it is,
Right.
I'm willing to push myself,
Right.
and fortunately there've been some people who just enjoy reading what I write, which is great, and
Nice.
other people will focus on the cozies, or I have some who just read the splatter western,
Mhm.
and no one's reading my last book, so I don't know what happened there. Um, I think it's a good story, but you never know what's going to be there. But let's talk about world building. Obviously, you're pulling from so much place where you're living. But how do you go about designing your world? Because you have to have some fictional element to it. Since you
Mhm.
have Devil's Beach, great name, by the way. I mean, my cozy or my pulp splatter Western, it's part of the, there's takes place in Hell, Arizona. So
Nice.
I totally
Exactly.
loved, I love
Yep.
that dark imagery as well. And that book is really dark. I mean, like really dark. Um, that was, I let myself go on that one. That's why I think why I like that novel so much. It's like the first time I felt completely free in my
Wow.
prose.
Nice.
And
That's a good feeling.
yeah, it really is. And it's like people won't read it because it's so dark, but so it's okay. It's like that finally. And now I'm aware of what I can do. And when I feel completely free,
Uh-huh.
that made me creatively, made me very happy. But how did you go about creating not only Devil's Beach, but when you do create a town, a
Mhm.
place for these characters, what was your process?
So actually, interestingly, in 2018 and 2019, I had written a romance series. It was called Paradise Beach, and it was a 5-book series, um, very contemporary romance. It was set on a place called Paradise Beach, with, 5 siblings who all find love. And I loved the story, and I created this whole world of an island called Paradise Beach, an island in the Gulf of Mexico. And I realized that I was spending a lot of time like building in the quirkiness of the town and the characters and the secondary characters. And um, people liked the romance, but it didn't hit the way I wanted it to. I indie published that, and it didn't hit the way I wanted to. And so at that point, that was also when I decided to write cozy mystery. And so I took some of the elements that I loved from that series of Paradise Beach and made it into Devil's Beach. And so for both of those, and it's amplified in Devil's Beach because obviously in cozies that world building needs to be amplified. Um, I based it loosely on Sanibel Island, which is this sort of upscale island in the Gulf of Mexico near Fort Myers. There's a 7-mile bridge that connects it to the mainland, and it's a pretty big island. And there's a nature preserve on the island, and the beach is beautiful, and there's great shelling. It's just this sort of idyllic place, but also a lot of it is inspired by the barrier islands near where I live in St. Petersburg. I live about 5 miles from the beach. And so there's places called Treasure Island, St. Pete Beach, Madeira Beach, and there are all these little beach communities. About 15 years ago, I lived on Treasure Island. I lived about a half block from the beach, and there was a tiki bar and a convenience store and, quirky people. And it's all based on that. It's really all, I'm a pretty literal person. That's why the vampire romance is this real stretch for me, because I'm a very literal person. I don't do well with other worlds. Like I don't tend to read fantasy, even historical novels. I tend to get sort of hung up on things like, well, didn't they smell? And like, you know, I'm very rooted in the present,
You
very
haven't bathed in
happy.
2 months. I'm not going to make out with you, right?
Exactly. Like there's no toothpaste. Like I'm very rooted in the present, and I'm very fortunate. I feel very fortunate to live in the present. And I just, I feel like uh, I, I draw from the here and now and the reality. So also St. Petersburg, like I explained, is this sort of quirky city. So I take a lot from my city too, because it is this quirky, um, sort of progressive, diverse place.
Hmm. What aspect of your world do you like the most? The world that you have created for your cozy mystery series. If you could
Hmm.
pick one thing.
I think that everybody knows each other and
Hmm.
isn't terrible to each other.
Okay.
Like they know each other, and they know each other's quirks, but they accept them. Like there's Rusty the day drinker, who also carves pelicans out of like found wood. Everybody knows that Rusty day drinks, but that's okay. He carves great pelicans, and Barbara makes stuff out of sea glass, and Erica lives on the sailboat, and everybody knows each other and just sort of accepts each other for who they are.
And there's the fantasy, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Especially now. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we like finding ways of hating each other. Yes. Uh, okay, that's fantastic. That's great. So you created a world, and like you said, you have these characters who inhabit it, and you want to create these quirky characters. And I kind of, even in that little description, it was enough for my imagination to start like thinking, oh, I think I kind of have what this person looks like,
Mhm.
or I'm imagining carving out the pelicans,
Mhm.
or I'm imagining the glass. So it doesn't take much in that regard, I think, to start of imagination going. So let's talk about your characters and how you created them. What process do you go through when generating and populating your world and creating these memorable kind of quirky characters?
Um, the heroine in the coffee series, the Devil's Beach series, she is a laid off journalist,
Lana
Lana Lewis. Mhm.
Lewis. Okay, I'm gonna just do a hard stop here. Sorry to interrupt. Um, did you read comic books as a kid at all?
A little bit.
I mean, the alliteration
Mhm.
goes in both Marvel and DC.
Yep.
Um, you know, J. Jonah Jameson with
Mhm.
Spider-Man, and Lana Lang,
Mhm.
and Lois Lane in
Yep.
Superman.
Yep.
So was that any influence at all? Because Lois Lane is a reporter, she's fearless. I mean, I can
Um,
see how that would be an attractive kind of alliteration.
no, it wasn't. I actually, my first romance was also about a reporter heroine, and her name was Skylar Shaw. So I just think that it
The
just works.
alliteration is just
Yeah,
is
I
just
think
part
it
of the
just
fun.
works. Yeah.
Okay, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, I think it just works. Yeah. So Lana is, a laid off reporter, as so many people are, and she decides to return to her hometown of Devil's Beach, and help her dad with the family cafe, Purgatory. And her mom had been a had her mom had opened the cafe. Her mom has passed, and her mom opened the cafe, and had also been a coffee buyer for many years. So I did a lot of coffee research. That was the one thing that I did do. I have a friend here who works for Batdorf and Bronson, Dancing Goats Coffee. It's a wholesaler, but he also does coffee tours of cafes in St. Petersburg. So I went on his coffee tour, and he has like a coffee lab where he does coffee cuppings and coffee tastings, and he explains to me all the science behind coffee. So I did a lot of research on coffee. Um, and I still am doing research on coffee, because every book has like a new drink, and there's some new coffee issue in each book.
And it has
So
to be accurate because there are people who will know.
yes,
That's the
yes, the
thing.
coffee thing is
Yes,
is the thing I research the most for this series.
and you're used to research as a reporter, and I like that aspect of researching for my books. Three of the four books I've written have had extensive research,
Mhm.
so I like that part. The
Yeah, I
academic in
do
me
too.
comes and because in my pulp fiction stuff, you know, Gage Black takes place right after the Civil War. So I had to do research what was going on with
Mhm.
Arizona and the mail routes and the weaponry of the time. And Gage Black was a Union soldier from Ohio. So I wanted to find out what regiments were in Ohio. Where would he have
Mhm.
come from? And my last book, Death's Head, is like my homage to the Phantom, Lee Falk's pulp character.
Mhm.
So it's early 1930s, right on Haiti, on an island south of Haiti called Cochamar,
Mhm.
and voodoo and zombies. And I wanted to make sure all that information was
Mhm.
accurate because
Mhm.
this is a people's religion, and I want to be respectful and know who these Loa, the
Mhm.
spirits are. So, and I just loved it, being able to learn that and then to put it into a story in a way that wasn't like being beaten over the head with a history lesson, but the little tiny details that makes all the importance.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was the most fun, and I still do that research, the coffee research, and um, love it. That was a lot of fun.
That's excellent. I love that. And I know people who hate research and so they write fiction or like fantasy.
Mm.
They because they don't want to do any research, and
Oh,
they can invent wholesale, like as long as the world makes sense. Like,
right,
here, this rock turns into a horse at night. Like,
right.
okay,
Okay.
sure, why
Yeah,
not?
I'm trying that with the vampire romance. That's actually a serial novel that I'm publishing every week on Wattpad. And there are some people who are like, wait, vampires, have fated mates. I thought that was just werewolves. And I'm like, well, not my vampires. Like, I'm just kind of making it up as I go along.
They
And
have what? Faded
fated
what?
mates, fated, like,
Oh, I'd never heard that.
well,
Well, I
like,
mean, the original Vamp Dracula has this, Mina and Lucy, those attractions, but I didn't know that was a trope.
you know what? I don't think it is for vampires. It is in
Yeah,
mine, but
sure.
I think it's more for werewolves.
I didn't know
Werewolves are a big deal on Wattpad, and
that. Okay.
vampires are too.
That's
But
a whole
I
other
have not.
community of writers. That's intriguing.
Yeah, Wattpad is wonderful. There is a real passionate community of writers there and readers. There's more readers than writers, but the writer community and the writer groups are really tight
Huh.
knit. I really found my place there. It's really
Oh,
wonderful. And yeah, so I have to confess that I have not read widely. I've read the classics in vampire, but I haven't, and I've read Twilight, obviously, who hasn't? But I'm kind of just making this up as I go along about the vampires. I've had this idea for a while, and I wanted to write a story that had no technology in it, which is why I set it in 1986. I didn't want to, because in a romance,
technology, like, you mean like cell phones?
yeah, like cell phones,
Okay.
computers,
Mm.
all that can really kill a romance. Everybody's texting and
Oh, I
everybody
see.
knows where everybody is, and you can call
Okay.
people or not call people. And like in 1986, you just couldn't do that. You had to just show up at people's doorsteps, or
Phone
somehow get
call.
them a note. Yeah, phone
Right.
call. But if you live in a dorm, it's a college set. So if you live in a dorm, you don't have a phone in your room. And I
Oh,
went to
no?
college in the
Yeah.
late 80s in Boston. So it's
Yeah.
kind of based on, and it's
Okay.
set in sort of the punk rock goth world of
Yeah.
that time.
And you had no
Um,
phones in your dorm, in your rooms?
we had a payphone on the
Really? Oh, interesting. I
yeah.
went to Bowling Green. We had phones in our rooms.
Yeah, we didn't.
Huh.
I mean, you would think that
Interesting.
we paid enough, but no, we didn't.
No,
No, I
no,
don't.
that's
I
cool.
mean, maybe some people did. Maybe my roommates and I were just too poor. I don't recall. Like, I don't remember like being on the phone in my dorm. Like, I
Yeah.
remember the payphone, but I don't remember being on the phone. Like, we would just go
Right.
places and see
Right. You go to
people. And
someone's door, or you get the gang
right,
together and you just start doing a room like, hey, we're going on here. You want to go? No,
right,
I
right.
totally
And
get
like,
it.
and sometimes you didn't meet up with people, or you had to leave notes for people, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Sticky notes on the door.
right,
Right.
exactly.
Or you
So if
slide it under the door like a note.
right, or like somebody gives you a note, like you're walking downstairs and there's where I lived in Boston, I lived at this dorm that was an old hotel called the Charles Gate, and it was a complete city block. It's no longer owned by Emerson, but it was this old Gothic structure that had like mosaic tile in the lobby. And it was part of it actually was still under rent control, so you had like a few people on a floor or two that were still renting it but couldn't be evicted. So then there were all these college students around. It was all very rickety and old, and some people had
Oh,
fireplaces in their rooms, and it was very Gothic. If you look at it, you can see like the spires. And so that I've I've long thought about that dorm and that building. And so it's set there. She doesn't go to Emerson. She goes to
yeah.
Boston University, which was actually across the street, but it's set in the back bay of Beacon Hill, Boston. And vampires.
I want to live there. Right. That
Yeah,
sounds amazing. That's
and it's also like my recollections of going to the clubs and seeing bands and seeing you know seeing the Mission and seeing the bands that I saw when I was
yeah.
18 and 17 and
Right.
in Boston. And I was a little punk rock girl back then,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was
You might have liked, yeah, some of the bands that I was in college, you might have enjoyed. Yeah. One,
probably.
one
Yeah,
was a punk edge death metal band. We
nice,
had elements of both.
nice.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
I love that. And I love how much you're bringing of your personal experience into your story. I mean, all writers, I think you have to do that to some degree, to whether your characters or place. But I just love how much you draw from your world experience and your life and invest them into this kind of fantasy world.
yeah.
I
Well,
just love that.
thank you. This is really probably more drawn from my life, and oddly, even though it's a paranormal and has no basis in actual reality since there's vampires, but
Yeah.
it's actually more drawn on my life than almost any other book. And it's interesting because most of the readers on Wattpad are a lot younger than I am. A lot of them are teenagers. They're young enough to be my grandkids, and some in some quarters. And I don't have kids. And it's interesting because young people now, you know those were the days. 1980, I mean 86, I was 15, so I based it even earlier than when I was in Boston. But in 1988 and 1989 in Boston, you'd go to a club or you'd go to a bar with your fake ID, and I was 18, 19, and you would meet a man and you would look him in the eye and he would buy you a drink and you would have a conversation. And I don't think that the younger generation really, a lot of them, because of the pandemic and because of technology, they don't know what that's like. They don't know what that's like to, flirt with somebody and that face-to-face connection. And
Yeah.
so it's like, I wanted to capture that in this story in ways that I don't think that happens much anymore, sadly.
Yeah.
And
Those teenagers are gonna read that and they're going, oh, my grandma's written a story.
right,
This is back when my grandma was alive.
that's what I worry about. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, but it's interesting because some of the things, I do think that there is this yearning for that kind of connection. And all of my
Yeah.
story, all of my romance on Wattpad, is infused by that. I don't know about, I mean, there are some things that I will say, or somebody did write in my vampire romance, I wrote that a character had feathered hair. And somebody said, I
What's
don't
that?
I don't understand what you mean. And I
Right.
was like, oh God,
A
I'm just gonna
Dorothy
go
Hamill, right? Yeah, no, not ringing a
Farrah
bell.
Fawcett. I'm just gonna go turn to dust now and just
Yeah,
go walk into a field and
yes,
die of old
yeah,
age.
I know.
So
You might as well say pompadour, you know?
yeah, exactly. Like feathered hair, like because feathered
Yeah,
hair. But so
I
it's
tried it
so
one day.
funny.
I tried feathered hair. My hair just didn't
Nice,
naturally go that way. I was
nice.
always a comb over. I was always a nerdy comb over. And I tried the feathering because I'm like, I wanted to be, in eighth grade, and you're trying to fit in and trying to
Yep.
be part of whatever the larger thing that everyone else seems to have so much relaxation in their skin. And being someone who never felt comfortable in his own skin, it was like, and I tried it one day. I'm like,
Yeah.
nope,
Yeah.
it just didn't work. So,
Yeah. I mean, I spent hours with the curling iron and the aqua net trying to
yeah,
feather my hair. And,
yeah. I
you know,
I I uh I was finishing up my undergrad in 1990. Um and I was, the big hair. It's huge,
mhm, mhm.
and I didn't know how to do it, go about and padding. I wanted to make these little tiny balsa wood surfboard people who would then fit on top of the big wave. And I thought, God, if I could do that, that would be a great, addition. And like
Right.
girls could be wearing this, or guys could be wearing this, like little surfboard guys on their heads, like I could become a billionaire,
Oh my God. Oh my
And I
God.
thought that
That's
because balsa
hilarious.
wood was so light, it wouldn't like
Yep.
crush down the
Yep.
curl.
Yep. Yep.
But growing up in the big hair era,
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah, and all you
definitely. I
so a little
dated a
more
guy from
spritz.
Berkeley. He was in like some sort of metal band. And I remember because he really was super influenced by like, Vince Neil and Nikki Sixx. And I remember like, because I was kind of by that point, I was kind of like a grungy kind of punk girl. And he would just take his time in the mirror and put on the frosted lipstick. And it would be, and I'd just like
He was
head
glam.
short.
He was totally
It was
glam metal.
totally glam. And I had like
Yes.
shaved hair and I just like would wake up and get out of bed. It was hilarious. But like he had like the floofiest hair and
Yeah.
like the prettiest makeup. It was so, I mean, the 80s were awesome costumes.
I
They were, so I'm trying to
Good.
capture that. And it's
No,
so much
that's
fun.
lovely.
It's
That's
so fun.
fantastic.
It's like,
I
it's honestly like, and the thing is, Wattpad, I can, unlike, I feel like with indie romance, especially, it's sort of like you have to really pick a lane with indie romance. And you should, like, in order to be truly successful and make money, like, if you're going to write small town romance, you stick with that or do a pen name, or vampire romance and you stick with it and you do it, or you do a pen name if you want to write anything else. Like the market in indie romance is not really forgiving for people who jump around in genres.
really that I don't understand that incestuousness.
It's really readers
Like that
really,
limitation. Like, why would you want to hobble me and limit me into like one lane? Why can't I just be
it's
allowed to
really a
write?
marketing thing. It's really like the more tightly branded you are, the better in
Oh, okay.
romance. And
I see.
the readers want what they want, because in
Huh.
romance it's like in romance people want certain, like a lot of people have certain tropes that they like. But on
Mhm.
Wattpad, it's very different. And my readers will follow me. Like they're like, okay, she's writing a vampire romance. Cool. And maybe they've never read a vampire romance, but they like my writing, so they
Mhm.
follow that. And I
Right.
really love that. And I'm actually about to, I have a book that I have not, that my agent couldn't sell. And it's actually a cozy mystery. And I'm going to make it a little bawdier and sexier, and it's a murder mystery romance, and I'm going to put it on Wattpad, and it's a total blend of genres. I'm so excited about it, and that will be coming up. So it's kind of a blending of all my worlds.
That's exciting.
Super exciting.
Yeah, I just keep on laughing about the makeup. I wore makeup like for Halloween as Gene Simmons one year.
Oh,
And but you know, my band, we wore drag one night because we were playing with a punk band called The Stain, and they said they were just going to wear duct tape. And I thought, well, I'm not taping my junk up, but let's do drag. And so I had really long hair, really long curly hair. And like I was like the living Barbie head, you know, the girls would
Wow.
come down from the floor and would like do my hair up, and you know, it was just awesome. So I had the full makeup. They did the treatment on me, you know, and I wore one of my aunt's
Nice.
dresses, you know,
Nice.
things like that. Yeah, but I get it. I'm like, it was just so much work to go through that, you know,
That's a lot of work.
it was a lot of work, and it was just it was very drafty. It was a cold night. I'm like, wow, okay, now I get, and this is a different feeling, you know, wearing a dress.
Yeah.
But no, that's fantastic. Can I bring things back around? Uh, I think I can kind of guess this answer, but which of your characters would you most like to have a drink with?
Oh. Hmm. Hmm, hmm, hmm.
Because you've written in, you know, you have several different genres now,
Right.
so you know, it's bound to be a
Yeah,
character.
I think it would be my secondary character in the Devil's Beach series, Erica Penmark. Yeah, she lives on a sailboat. She's kind of a free spirit. She's
Okay,
awesome. Yeah, I love her.
what would be the first question you would ask her?
Mm, this is alluded to in the book, so I would ask her what really happened with those anger management classes in Boston, because it's never really explained. Or as of yet, it's not explained. Like I
Okay,
have the mystery in each cozy mystery. I have the immediate mystery of a murder, but there are a few things that are that happen across the series. Like there's an overarching mystery with Lana and something that happened in her past, so we don't know yet, and hopefully my publisher will buy more books so I can write what happens in those mysteries. So,
sure. Yeah, that's interesting. I want to talk about your creative process as far as like plotting goes. And even if you want to bring in like, well, organization's a separate issue altogether, but what is your creative process when writing and plotting your books?
for my cozy mysteries, I actually use something called Plotter, Plottr. And I plot out a timeline, and I plot out each chapter and the scenes in each chapter. I'm really diligent and pretty hardcore about it, because I think that cozy mysteries and mysteries in general need to be plotted pretty tightly. Because, you know, one of the goals of a cozy mystery is you don't want the reader to immediately guess who the perpetrator is.
Yes, and you
Um,
want to put in those red herrings,
exactly.
you know, which are delightful when
Yes.
the readers come back and say, "I thought this was the person," you know.
Yes, yes, exactly. So I do it out. I do a timeline, and I do it because also cozy mysteries, unlike romances, which can sometimes happen over the course of months or years, cozy mysteries are a really tight time frame. You know, a week or two at most. So
Yes, okay.
I actually just plot by day of the week. And so Plotter, you can see the whole timeline, and you
Yes,
can have different timelines. So I have a timeline for, you know, the main mystery. I have a timeline for the romance. I actually have even a timeline for what's going on with Stanley. So one of the characters is Stanley the Shih Tzu, the dog. And so I really don't like books that have dogs, and like we don't like the dog makes an appearance and then we don't know who's taking care of the dog. Is the dog home alone? I think about the
sure.
dog.
Right.
So in my mind, at least, I know where Stanley is at all times. Like, is he with
Okay.
dad? Is
It
he with
helps you
Lana?
not be so anxious and worry about him.
Exactly.
I get
And
it.
you know, and then there's a line for the red herrings. I also have like I plot out um the Florida influences, like the weird Florida or the Florida
Yeah.
influences. So I plot that out by day and chapter. And so
Okay.
that's how I do that. I'm really like, before I write, I set, and it usually changes. Some of the plot points usually change, but I
Mhm.
usually try to plot it out pretty heavily
That's
um,
wonderful.
before I write.
Uh,
Romance is a little more emotion based. So like this serial I'm writing for vampires, I have an idea of where it's going. Like I know where the next 5 chapters are going. And I have a vague idea of how, obviously romance has to end with a happy ever after with the couple, or a happy for now with the couple. So that is a genre convention. So you don't mess with that. But other than that, I'm not entirely sure where it's going. But usually I do plot my romances.
So you're kind of pantsing in a way.
That is a new thing.
Yeah,
That,
interesting.
that
Okay.
is, it's a true serial novel. It's written
Yeah.
in snippets. I release 3 or 4 scene chapters a week. They're short, major cliffhangers at the end. It's very
Sure.
hooky. So I don't, that may be a really long serial. That may be sort of an epic over the course of decades.
Yeah. Why finish the story when you can keep it going?
Yeah,
And it's
I'm
like
just
it becomes a soap opera in a way, in
yeah.
the best way. That's not derogatory in any
Yeah,
way, shape,
no,
or
I
form.
know. I've written a few of those. My most popular books have been long serials. My most popular romances. There's one on Wattpad that has 5 million reads, and it's a long. It's probably 200, 300,000 words, and it's in like an epic tale of this one
Yeah.
couple.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's fun.
I did not know that the Cozy Mystery Convention was a week or two short, because
Well,
when I wrote my book, it's called The 'Twas the Week After Christmas, and it takes
mhm,
place in a week, and it's arranged
yeah,
by that very thing. And all my books are a week long,
yeah.
so I just kind of, oh, this is a nice
It
formula.
feels right to me. I mean, I don't think that is I don't know if that is the convention.
Okay.
The majority of the ones that I've read seem to be that way, and that's just my feeling. I also, honestly, because of my experience with crime and covering crime, I draw heavily upon like, and obviously I draw heavily upon that, and obviously the reporter in, or the main character in the Devil's Beach, the coffee series, she was a reporter, and so part of her thing is that she's in this coffee shop called Purgatory, but she's also in this sort of weird journalism purgatory. Like, she wants to still be a journalist, but there aren't really any jobs, and she really likes Devil's Beach, but there definitely aren't jobs there, and like the paper isn't hiring, and they pay like $7 an hour, and but sometimes she freelances, and sometimes those stories don't pan out, so she's in this weird journalism purgatory. So I also tend to, in my mind, frame the unfolding of the crime as when I covered crime. You would find out about the body, and there would be a press conference, and things would unfold after that, and then there would be an arrest. So in my mind, that's how the story unfolds. In some ways, it is kind of a procedural in that sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
I feel like I just have like this innate sense of like how a crime unfolds, and I kind of work around that. But I do always know, like, when I start to plot, I figure out who the victim is, and I figure out who the killer is and why they killed them. Like, those are the most important, and then everything else kind of revolves around that.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm
What?
pretty analytical about it.
No, no, you have to be. I think, especially again, mystery.
Mhm.
um, not just because the books are longer, but my outline is much more detailed, and I have it
Mhm.
color coded. Elements of the mystery are in one color, the cozy elements are in one color, character building are in other colors. So when I'm writing that particular section, I know what I'm trying to reinforce.
You should check out
And
Plotter. It's really cool.
okay, I had used, normally I just looked at like Babisco and Scrivener, but it was like I was doing these things on my own, just like making
Yeah.
my own folders in Word and kind of doing those things. I'll probably from years of academia, but I can check out Plotter. It's just one of those things
Yeah.
where I
I'm
just
not a
never looked at those
scrivener.
helps.
I'm not a scrivener
It's a
person.
serious learning curve.
Like, I'm not, but
Yeah.
Plotter is like almost like that, but not quite. Like, there's not
Okay.
a lot of learning curve, and you can make it adapt to what you want. Like, it's very,
Okay.
and the other thing that is really cool about Plotter is that, like, if you want to look at the hero's journey, for instance, or other
Hmm.
plotting techniques,
Hmm.
it comes with some preloaded templates, so that
Oh,
it
okay.
will populate your timeline with like the hero's journey, so you
Oh,
can see
interesting.
where you line up with that. And
Right.
there's like probably 15 or 20 of them in
Oh,
various genres.
P L
So
L P L O T T E R or just R?
Plotter,
Okay. I'll check it out.
and
Because
I'm not a Scrivener person, so
yeah, and I looked at it because I got a free version, and same thing with Babisco. It was just a free trial, and I looked at it, I'm like, I'm already doing these things.
Yeah.
And that's not coming from a place of arrogance. It's just like,
Yeah.
I'm doing these things. It's a neat way of visually looking
Mhm.
at organization, like, oh, here's my cork board, but I'm a lister.
Yeah.
And that's how I generate ideas, then I develop them. And again, 30 years in academia taught me how to make good outlines and how
Yeah.
to organize. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like a unnecessary for me to make
Yeah.
that
I get
jump.
that. Yep.
But I kind of like that because my main characters in the cozy, I'm using Maslow's hierarchy of needs as her
Mhm.
character arc. When she starts, she's at the bottom.
Mhm.
She's lost her job. She doesn't know where she's going to live, and all these things. And hopefully, she'll be self-actualized by the time we
Mhm.
get to the end of the book 4. We'll see.
Nice.
But I'm enjoying that aspect of Maslow because it was
Yeah.
one thing that made such an impact to me when I was taking my first like psychology class in high
Mhm.
school. Was like, oh, self-actualization, getting to know myself. Oh my God, this is like a new concept. Where's this been? And so she's gone from the base level to the next step up is dealing with connections to people
Mhm.
and relationships. Now, I normally wouldn't read a book about relationships because that's just not my thing. But writing about them is totally different as a creative
Mhm.
endeavor. And so now she's her base needs have been met. Now she's in this kind of murky, it's a spring book. So
Mhm.
I don't look at the spring as the happy flowers and bright green. I look at like the spring it is now. Everything's all dead looking and wet,
Mhm.
and the leaves and things are broken and scraped mud from the plows. And the ugly part, the Good Friday of spring, not the
Mhm.
Easter.
Right.
And so it makes sense to me to kind of bring in these
Yeah.
very accessible tropes and formula as her mental state is just
Definitely.
too much in her own head and like trying to figure things out in a way like, oh my God,
That's great.
she's so loosey goosey in her head and cognizant of the fact that she's
Mhm.
loosey goosey. And that's kind of, it's distracting her from
Yep.
other things that she has to deal. And like the mystery is there. And now she's pulled in this mystery, but she's also trying to do this and she's super distracted. And as a I love that part of writing because then it also allows me to kind of be a little distracted and meandering
Yep.
because it seems like it's the thing to do is
Yeah.
for creating
Yeah. I
prose,
love that, using the hierarchy of needs. I think that's really cool.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
really, I like that a lot.
It's a simple structure for
Mhm.
me because again, we're only doing 4 books.
Right.
Um, it makes sense. Like we can achieve self-actualization within a year, and that's the stories all take place within the same, year,
Mhm.
just several months apart. But yeah, thank you. I hope she finds self-actualization. We'll find out. I don't know. I haven't plotted out the last 2 books. I'm still writing the second one. I just have big ideas about what could be
Mhm.
in there, but we'll never know.
Nice.
Um, what part of the writing process do you like the most?
Mm. I think the plotting. I actually really love plotting.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
that's when it's all fresh and like the imagination is going like,
Mhm.
oh,
Mhm.
just taking
Really
all these
exciting.
pieces
Yeah.
and like seeing how they fit best.
Being inspired by different things. Yeah, I love plotting.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Is there a process that you like the least?
Um, I'm not great with the editing details, like the like the final edits, the copy edits, the proofreads. His eyes are blue in chapter 3 and green in chapter 10. I'm not,
Continuity.
yeah, I'm not a super detail person, so I have to really be mindful of that. It's not my favorite.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Um, I wonder if that's a reaction to having to be detail oriented as a journalist, do you think?
Yeah, I had really good copy editors there too. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Copy editing is important.
it
I'm
is.
doing both, some copy editing and also the broad editing. Um,
Yeah.
so I get that. I did a lot of that kind of copy editing stuff when I was teaching English. So, you know,
Yeah.
I was so I took perverse pleasure in writing an intentional fragment. Like when I got away from teaching
Oh,
comp
right.
and I wrote my first intentional fragment, I'm like, yeah, suck it, English composition. There's a fragment.
Right. I'm starting a
Right.
sentence with but.
Exactly right.
Take
Yes, everything I
that.
taught, like, yes. How many middle fingers can I put up against you?
Nice.
Yeah. Uh, this probably you probably because you being a journalist that you probably found out this earlier, but when did you first come to realize what your writer voice was? When going to fiction is totally different. When you're writing journaling reporting, that's a different detached voice, I think, presenting
yeah,
the
for the most
information.
part.
So when
Yeah.
you started writing fiction, when did you realize this is how I want to say what I want to say?
It was actually after my second book, because my first two books were in third person, and they didn't really fit. I'm really a first person writer.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
it was really on my third book that I thought I'm going to try to write something. I actually wrote a novella that turned into a serial novel, and I wrote it in first person, and I loved it. It just felt different. Readers responded to it differently, and and so I write in first person now, both in cozy and in romance.
It lends itself to an immediacy and intimacy
Mhm.
with the character, because
Right.
you're already in the person's thoughts,
Yep.
especially if they're, and I understand that, because sometimes I think it's easier to imagine being that person and writing like in first person and then transposing it to third in a way. I've
I've
done that
tried
before.
that, and I tried it both ways, transposing from third to
Hmm.
first and first to third. That is not my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
I really hate it, actually, and I actually really love, and I know some people loathe this, but I actually really love first person present. I think first person
Oh,
present, if done well, can be really fun. Um,
okay.
I mean, I try to read really well done first person stories and
Are you a
books.
fan of H.P. Lovecraft? Speaking of it, first person, or have you read
No,
much Lovecraft?
I haven't. No,
Okay.
no, that's not really my
Okay.
genre.
Because almost all his fiction is first person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I tend to, if I'm going to read outside of like mystery and romance, I tend to read literary fiction. Like there's some Haruki Murakami who's first person, and I tend to like really, and I also love domestic thrillers in first person.
Okay.
Love
Interesting.
them. Yeah, like the
Yeah.
Bathhouse. That was a recent wonderful first person. The Hunting Wives. The
Hmm.
like popular domestic thrillers are often in first person, and I love them.
Oh, okay. When
Um,
I when
yeah.
I was writing the cozy, there is the omniscient narrator, but then the main character finishes the narrator's thoughts with her
Mm,
own,
mm,
interjects herself. And I didn't
mhm,
realize that this had a style for the name. It just kind of felt right,
mhm, mhm,
because I wanted the reader to be inside this character's head, because the
mhm,
story is being told through her experience,
mhm,
but I didn't want it to be first person.
mm,
But there are a lot of times where you get her inner monologue, and I
mhm,
always make sure that those are in italics so it
mhm.
separates,
Yeah,
and um, that's as a device, as a writing
yeah,
device. So no, I totally get that in a way, because this is the first time I'd ever done that either,
yeah,
and it becomes part of the cathartic writing of the process.
yeah.
It immediately allows you to process and think about things in an immediate way,
Yep,
that's very intimate, and you can explore real feelings and thoughts and
exactly.
regrets in a way
Yep,
that's honest and truthful, that
yep.
you can't always get with just a strictly third person narrator.
Yeah, I also find that for younger readers who came up reading, Twilight, uh, and other YA, that they're already primed for first person, especially in romance.
Okay.
And they have a really hard time connecting with third person. I think
Interesting.
older romance readers tend to love third person a lot more.
Well,
Older and very established people who've been reading romance for decades tend to love third person.
sure.
Um, I personally generally don't like reading third person in romance. It's just my thing.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I get it. Every genre has its own
Yep.
formula and
Mhm.
expectations.
Yeah, and like cozy also. Cozy for me, the writing is um, kind of borders on chick lit in a way,
Mhm,
which is
mhm.
also first person.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. And I was just thinking, now I realized all of my characters have this. When I write, I also write a lot of inner monologue,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I think maybe comes from my love of comic books as a kid, because
Mm-hmm.
characters are often thinking things,
Mm-hmm.
reading their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm just thinking, oh, that's probably it.
Yep.
Growing up reading Spider-Man and
Yep.
stuff, Spider-Man's always thinking.
Yeah.
If he were talking to himself all the time, it would seem odd.
Yeah. Exactly.
That makes perfect sense now. So,
Yep. Yep.
Do you have a favorite time of day that you like to write, or evening?
I prefer the evening, but now that I'm full time, I kind of write during the day just because it's easier with my husband and our schedule, the dogs,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah. Um, do you listen to music while you write, or have some kind of distraction, or do you like it completely silent?
Um, I like distraction. I prefer writing in cafes. I like to have, I think it comes from, working in a newsroom for so long. I like to have, I don't necessarily listen to music. Sometimes I do, but not usually. I prefer just to be writing in cafes where there's stuff going on around me.
Okay. It makes perfect sense, because I would be so distracted with all the, people talking and stuff. But if this is what you're used to,
Mhm.
it almost becomes its own white noise
It
in a
is,
way. And
yeah,
I
definitely.
totally get that.
Yeah. When I
Because
really need to focus, I go to a cafe.
okay, wow, that's
I mean,
great.
I can sort of write anywhere. I mean, as a journalist, I had to write in my car and on the side of the road, whatever. So I can write anywhere, but when I really need to focus or when I really need to like be creative or if I'm kind of stuck in a scene, I go to a cafe.
That's fascinating.
Mhm.
I have a playlist, a writing playlist. I
Mm.
like music, but it can't have words,
Mm.
other than maybe some of the Mozart's Misse or his Requiem. But it's got to be, depending on what I'm listening to or what I'm writing, kind of influences the music that I want to listen to. A lot of
Mhm.
soundtracks,
Mhm.
or like my cozies. I like to write listening to music from the 1930s.
Mm.
A lot of like vibraphone music. Lionel
Mm.
Hampton and
Mm.
those guys have this kind of a light vibrancy. And there's
Mhm.
also one of the characters is an autistic boy who has a small powered radio station, and he
Mm.
loves the music from the 30s. So it allows me to interject that
Oh,
into the
nice.
stories, and then also have like pull from my own playlist, like real
Uh-huh.
songs by real
Yeah.
people of the time. And it it sometimes people say, "Oh, I never heard of this person. I'm gonna go try, check them out." I'm like, "Okay, good." You know, so that's interesting. So how often do you write? And you said you could write anywhere, anytime. Do you have you like writing in the mornings?
Mm.
But do you write like every day, or?
I I'm not one of those, I don't think that you have to write every day, but I try to write every day. And most days, like at
Mhm.
least 5 days a week. I have a side gig copy editing and I have a couple of side gigs too. So some days I don't write, but like this week I'll probably write 5 days. I'm writing the vampire serial. It really just depends. Also, it depends on what I have going on in terms of edits, because some days are just heavy edit days, which end up being rewriting days. So it
Mhm.
just really depends.
Yeah.
I try to write at least like 500 to 1,000 words a day. I don't always get there. I don't beat myself up. I mean, if I do, I do. I'm not one of those
Yeah.
people. I have friends and other romance authors who are like, I wrote 5,000 words every day this week or 10,000 words.
Right.
And I'm a pretty fast writer, but I'm trying to find like balance and not burn out, because to me, it's really important to be healthy.
Yes.
So I try to take time out for yoga and walking and being
Yeah.
with the dogs and just having some joy in life. So I try not to push myself too much. I also take naps. So I just don't, I don't believe in um, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, you
Right. You've
know?
already had your sprint, in a
Yeah.
way, and
Yeah.
this is now part of a healthier, holistic kind of
Right.
approach to life,
Yes.
which makes total sense. And there's part of me that I admire the pulp writers of the 1930s, and I I always forget this man's name. He wrote 237 or the Shadow novels. He like over the course of 20 years, he wrote like a
Hmm.
45,000 word novel every month,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and just was cranking these books out. And there are the people who talk about writing pulp speed,
Hmm.
5,000
Yeah.
words a day, 10,000 words a day.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, when I'm writing, I write more per day than I used to. I think because I'm just getting a
Mhm.
little more efficient. But if I can hit 1,500 to 2,000 in a writing day, I feel
Mhm.
pretty happy about
Yeah,
that.
I
But
do
some
too.
days I struggle to get 500.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I've had like one day that was like, I think 45 or 4,600 was like the most I ever did. And
Mhm.
I was astonished that I did it, because it was just like in a couple hours. But I was like, I must have been right in the zone.
Mhm.
And I kept on like looking
Yeah.
at the word count, because I keep files of like every day's writing. I'll just change
Mhm.
the name of it so that I don't like accidentally lose everything. And I'm like, wait a minute. I kept on looking back and forth, like, oh my God, I wrote 4,500 words today.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, what did I do?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. I mean, I can write 5,000 words, but I don't know why I would. Like, there was somebody on
right. You're not in
TikTok
that big of a
recently.
hurry. It's like, I got it. It's like,
I mean,
it'll get there.
yeah, there was somebody on TikTok, people were talking about this. Somebody said that they write 52 books a year, like they're writing a book a week. And it's like, well, why? Like, why are you?
Yeah.
I'm not even questioning the quality. Like, I know people can write good quality and fast, but like, what's the point? Like, why should I harm my body, like physically? Because it's hard to sit in a chair for hours on end and not move and to type. Like, that's not the way your body is supposed to be for
Yeah.
hours on end. Like, I don't want, I I want to still be writing when I'm 70, and I'm
Right.
not going to be able to do that if I'm killing if I have carpal tunnel or if I
Right.
have musculoskeletal problems. So I don't know. Like, I think, and I also think that writers need to get out and experience some of the world. And obviously, we've all been cooped up because of the pandemic, but like, we need to be in the world and experience the world in order to write. I mean, it can't
Yeah.
all come from our minds. We have to experience some
Right.
things as human beings.
And there's only so many stories of your own. Once you start telling every story, like I've done in this show multiple times, like say the same things because every author is different. And I don't think anyone's like listening to every one of my episodes. I don't. If that's the case, then I apologize to you listeners. Uh, no, I get it. After a while, yeah, I think that's part of it. But what I see is that you've come to a place where you're seeking a happy balance
Yes.
with you. The pendulum has not swung both ways, but you're saying, look, I've been on the one path, and now I'm trying to come to a place where it all makes sense and it makes
Yes.
me happy in whatever I do. And you're plenty busy. You got editing, you got
Yeah. Oh,
multiple
yeah.
genres, you got a happy life, you got dogs. I mean, it's like, yeah, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're finding your sweet spot, and that's
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
what's good.
there's a real something to be said for deciding that you're happy in the moment,
Hmm.
that you're not going to, like, I don't want to wait until the big thing happens, the New York Times list happens, or the big
Yeah,
publisher gives me the nod. Like, I'm happy in the moment. Like,
sure.
this is it. This could be the best that it gets. So I
Yeah,
better make the most of it now,
because there's an intrinsic satisfaction just with creating.
Absolutely.
If it wasn't
Very
any
much so.
fun, because writing is hard work. People who don't understand that.
Right.
It can be grueling. It can be a slog fest.
Absolutely.
Um, and but there is a satisfaction that comes with having something done. And
Mhm.
yeah, I wrote this. It's now how I am defining myself.
Yep.
I totally get that. Just a few more questions, and then we'll get you out of here so you can go play shuffleboard and plan murder. Um, Tell me how you felt seeing your book in print for the first time, your first
Oh
book,
gosh.
or any of your books. But the first one is really special.
Yeah, hmm, I mean, it was pretty magical. Seeing my cozy in the local indie bookstore and in Barnes and Noble was really special. Romance, my indie romance was not like, uh obviously I was published by a small publisher in romance, and then I indie published. But seeing my cozy in bookstores was really special, and being able to like show my dad and stuff like that, that was really special.
Hmm.
That's a really good feeling. I feel like the reception that my cozies especially have gotten in bookstores, and this most recent book that was published by Wattpad, I just recently went to Barnes and Noble, and it was there on the shelf facing out. They had put it faced out. I didn't
Oh,
have to put
nice.
it faced out.
That's quality
So
space.
yeah, and it was
Yeah.
like right up at the top, and it was nice. So like, that was like a very excellent moment. So
Oh, that's great. Um, yeah, that is something very special that you have. Have you ever read your own work like a year or more after you first published it? Like gone back to it just to reread it, and what was that experience like?
well, actually, the book that was just published, Drive by Wattpad Books, I had actually written it, and I had actually written it with the idea of Harlequin in mind. So it was 50,000 words. And Harlequin passed on it. They asked for a full, and they passed on it. And then another publisher asked for it, and they passed on it. And since it was 50,000 words, my agent and I, there were no other places to try to sell it to, because they wanted longer romances. So I ended up eventually putting it on Wattpad for free, and then it went into the paid program. And then when they decided that they wanted to publish it as a book with their new adult imprint, we decided to rewrite it, not rewrite it, but add to it so that it was a longer book. And so I had to go back and read it after many years and edit and add in 30,000 words and really overhaul a lot of the book. So yes, I did. And it was painful. It was
That's
really
interesting.
painful. It was the hardest edit I have ever done.
That that's interesting that you say that word painful, because going back, I remember Stephen King talking about that, like going back to reread your work and how it's a very bizarrely transcendent kind of experience, unexpected, because in the moment you don't, I don't go back and reread my stuff unless I have to, because you've read it. By the time you publish it, it's like, I've read it, I know what's there. But because a couple of years had passed between my first cozy and rewriting, I had to like read my first one again. Like, I don't remember anything about the characters, and I was waiting for the cringe moments, which there weren't too many. There were a few moments like, okay, Mark, this is a little schmaltzy here. This is a little too saccharine. And I was like actively going, oh, if I were to change this, I would do this and this, but it wasn't worth the effort of making those changes. But what I found more surprisingly was like moments of like, I don't remember writing this.
Yeah, I don't remember writing a lot.
Yeah, and some of it was like, well, that's not bad here. Like, that's a good line, Mark. You did all right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Housemark was good. Yeah, it was more painful from the idea that like I was bringing these characters back, because when you write a romance, especially, it's like, and the ending, it's like their story is done. They have gone off into the sunset and they're living their best lives. So to go back and sort of rehash them and give them additional conflict and additional plot points is like, there's something, it's almost unsettling. It's like, oh, we're revisiting these people after they already got their happy ever after. Oh no.
Yeah.
So that's why it was painful.
Sure. I can see that. It's like dredging up memories that you had kind of already let go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've already worked through their issues, or I thought, but then we have to bring their issues back,
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah, you're pulling the scab off, Yeah, I get it. Yeah. So you've had your books out in public in the stores. Do you ever do like book shows or craft shows where you sell your books in person, or you do personal appearances to, book signings and things like that?
I've done book signings locally. I mean, I have. There's a really wonderful indie bookstore here called Tombolo Books, and they are super supportive. So I've done a bunch of book events there. I'm doing a book event later this month in Venice, Florida, with the Sisters in Crime group. If I do book events, it's usually local. I'm not super wild about them, but I do them.
So. Okay. If it's a different experience when people buy your book in person. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it just takes a lot out of me. So
okay.
I'm more of an introvert in many ways. So
yeah, you would never know from being here. So thank you again for showing up.
I'm okay. It just takes a lot out of me. Like I can be very open and personable and but it just takes a lot out of me. In person takes a lot out of me. Yeah. So I try to be pretty judicious about what I do.
Makes sense. Again, it's part of finding your balance.
Exactly.
Yeah. And just a few more and we'll get out of here. So what advice would you give for anyone who wants to write? Read a lot.
Just read in your genre, read out of your genre, read narrative nonfiction, read good journalism, just read. It seems like a lot of people, when they ask questions about genre, in Facebook groups and in writing groups, they haven't read. So just read a lot.
Yes, the more you read, the better prepared you are for anything. So can you tell us about your current work in progress? You already have, but is there anything else that, if you're work in progress or anything else that you would like to promote while we're here?
Well, my upcoming cozy mystery, Live and Let Grind, comes out with Crooked Lane Books in October 11th. And it's about Lana Lewis, our heroine, our intrepid former journalist heroine, her love interest, Noah Garcia, the police chief, and her best friend, Erica Penmark, who is a barista. And they delve into solving the murder of Lana's next door neighbor, who is a serial leaf blower. And among the suspects are his soon-to-be ex-wife, who has an Instagram channel devoted to roller skating. There's also a pirate ship, a tourist pirate ship involved, and of course, Stanley the Shih Tzu.
I love it. It's like I envision you writing down like all these ideas and then assigning a number and then rolling some dice and saying which one. It's like a random generator. Like, yes, these are the 3 plot points, and you're just like randomly picking up things. No, I that's fantastic. I'm just enthralled. I have to read these books. We will talk after the show because I have to read these now. That's just fun. It's just so much fun. And you've already kind of mentioned it before, but the last question is, where can we find your books?
You can find the cozies anywhere where books are sold. They're at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all of the usual places. My romances are all on Wattpad, and you can find my book Drive at bookstores like Barnes and Noble, Amazon. Obviously, that is in paperback and an ebook, but the rest of my books are all on Wattpad in digital form. Wonderful.
Tara, thank you so much for being on today. It has been an incredible joy to get to know you, and I'm really happy that you have found this good place where you are at, and you seem so content and happy and living your best life, you know?
Thank you. Well, you're a great interviewer. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. This has been fun. I love this conversational aspect, and I really like getting to know people this way and giving them a platform to showcase and shine.
Good.
So, well, I'm going to do my commercial and we'll get out of here. You've been watching and listening to Between the Lines. You can find us at unsaneradio.com. You can listen to full episodes or download to your device. You can watch us on our YouTube page, which is where you're at. That's where you're at. Between the Lines podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you know someone who would like our show, tell them about us. And if you're a writer who'd like to come on the show and have a chat with me, email me at betweenthelines54@yahoo.com, betweenthelines54@yahoo.com. And Tara, here's my cheesy outro line. See you next time, Between the Lines. Oh, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. You're awesome. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Great.